episode 116 of Retro Encounter, RPG fans, game-specific, off-topic sometimes podcast. I'm Mike Sollosi. I'm your host this evening. Or maybe you're not listening to this in the evening. Maybe I should just restart this introduction. Too late now, though. Too late now. And I'm joined today by one of my regular co-hosts, Alana Hagues.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be back.
Right, Alana, over the past month or month and a half or so, you and I have been playing Breath of Fire 4, the PS1 classic RPG from Capcom, back when Capcom made RPGs. And at the break of the last episode, I had finished Chapter 1 out of 4, even though 4 is just basically one dungeon and some bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my first time playing the game, and you were a little further ahead than me, and you had played this game before.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I'm just gonna get this out of the way right now. I love this game. It is super good. I have not enjoyed a retro encounter game this much since Shadow Hearts Covenant, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I'm struggling to find my words a little bit. When I play retro encounter games often, I'm pressed for time. Like, I have to finish this game in 2 weeks, and maybe I've had a busy week, and I don't always finish the ones for the episodes I'm on, which is unfortunate. And sometimes because I'm mainlining the game towards the end, I know I miss things, or like the end of the game is a lot less fun for me than usual. And especially with things like the last story. I think in like the last one of those episodes, you can hear my bitterness a little bit. But this is one of the few retro encounter games I've played where I honestly wish it was longer. Because like when I'm hitting endgame stuff and the end is in sight, I'm thinking to myself, oh man, is that really it? Like, I guess I could go back and go fishing or something, but that's not really what I want. I want more game out of this game.
Mm.
So, and we mentioned a little bit last episode how occasionally we thought it felt rushed because of the way the world map is positioned and the way events happen quickly. Do you think that Breath of Fire 4 is too long or too short, or rushed or not, or do you think it could be longer and still be as fun?
Yes, in the short, I think it could be longer. I mean, I clocked in a bit. We were talking before the episode we started recording, and we clocked in different times. So you were just under 30, and I was over 30. But it didn't feel like 30 hours. And for most of the game, it kind of felt like, I don't want to say padding, but there were various points in the narrative, in the game, where not much happened. And then all of a sudden, you'd have points where everything would happen. But then you have to think, how did it get to that point? And there felt like bits where I wanted to see more. I wanted to spend more time with some of the characters because
Yes.
one example being Elena, Nina's sister, who, as we said in the last episode, you spend most of the first half of the game going to save her, but you hit a point in chapter 2 where you realize what Ryu is, and you realize, hang on a minute, the Emperor has been resurrected and he's his other half. And then that becomes your end goal, going to meet the Emperor to find out what's going on.
Right.
So,
Yeah. But basically, the first 3 chapters are Chapter 1 is going to rescue Alina, and Ryu and meets the rest of the cast, or the first three characters. The second chapter is sort of in the fallout of being sent back to the Western continent. It starts out as breaking Cray out of prison, and then sort of becomes and then you sort of stumble into the knowledge that Ryu is a dragon and one of the endless, and setting that up. And chapter 3 is, now that we know Ryu's an endless and know about the Emperor, going to meet the Emperor directly and in possibly in advance of a war happening between the Eastern and Western kingdoms.
mhm.
But those are basically the 3 phases. But the Alina storyline is a little bit forgotten after chapter 1 until you end up at that exact castle where she's being held again
yeah, exactly the same.
in chapter 3. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So there are bits that feel, like you said, shafted, and you do want to know more. And it feels like a shame because, the world map is slightly disjointed, and there are these other things that are borrowed from previous games, which it's just, there's things missing. And it's such a shame because Breath of Fire 4's world feels really rich and they're vibrant full of color, full of races, characters. Each area is really, they're quite big, they're really nicely laid out, and it's just, I just wanted to spend more time finding out more about the dragons. Like, I would love to know some lore about some of the dragons because
Hmm.
we brought it up in the last episode as well. They're so cool, they're so well designed, and they're so various. And
I,
well,
I
yeah.
I love the dragon designs. They don't
Mm.
always look like dragons, and which I think is good. Like the wyvern transformation that Ryu has looks like a regular wyvern, a bipedal wyvern, but his like the mutant one looks like some kind of alien baby, and the behemoth one looks like a big rocky dragon warthog or something.
Yeah.
And I guess I might as well mention this now. When I started transforming into the different dragons in the second half of the game, it reminded me of Monster Hunter so much. Because no, seriously, if you took a Rathalos and a Gravios, two Monster Hunter monsters, and made them into 2000 era anime polygons, they would look like the Wyvern and the Behemoth transformation. So I'm
Amazing.
wondering if some of the artists or designers on Breath of Fire 4 moved on to Monster Hunter when Capcom moved into the PS2 era. I have no way of knowing this or proving this, but I like to think that there's some staff shared between those games.
Well, I mean, they share money, don't they? Isn't the money in Monster Hunter the same as Breath of Fire? Am I right?
Is it is
With
it is it
Zenny?
Zenny in both of them? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe so. It is Zenny in Monster Hunter.
Yeah,
But
so
I thought that was that for all Capcom games because it's also Zenny
yeah,
in
it
Mega
is.
Man Legends.
Yeah, it is. It's shared between them, which is a really cool thing.
Mm.
A definite.
But
But yeah.
yeah, the dragons their designs are so diverse. Some of them look like insects, some of them look alien.
Hmm.
I
Well,
like how the air dragon is sort of a big whale
yeah, it's really
with tusks. It's a really cool design.
yeah. I like the sea dragon because it's like a big turtle. It's a really, really big turtle.
I thought it was almost like a like a combination between a turtle and a squid almost.
Yeah,
Because
pretty much.
it was definitely very round, but it had these big tentacles. So it was like between a turtle and an octopus, and it was just all of the dragon designs are really cool. Whether
Hmm.
they're more traditional looking like the wyvern or real weird like the mud dragon, which is like a translucent mud centipede.
Yeah, I think Mud
Um,
Dragon is my favorite.
yeah, and the way that they set up what an endless is, which we learn near the end of chapter 2, is that they're beings or gods that are summoned into being by the people in this world, and they have great power, and they have the power to shape the world and change the world. And do endless become dragons after they like retire, or do they just are they sort of dragons and non-dragons? Because even the endless the dragon endless that you meet do have like humanoid forms, sort of. Because
Um,
they have like human-sized versions that you meet, and then when you summon them, they're big dragons or turtles or trees or whatever.
that's how I interpreted it, I think, because you have, well, they're dragons and non-dragons, possibly, because Deus has never been, so Deus is
Hmm.
um inside of Urshin for the most part of all of chapter one and most of chapter two, and then you find out that Urshin has had an endless trapped inside of she, um, for the whole of the, well, for most of the game, and Deus is human, but she doesn't have a physical form. She says she's lost it. And I'd imagine that the way that she comes across is
I'm
basically. Sorry?
and I should mention Deus is in the other Breath of Fire games. She's sh-
Ah, yes, she is.
she's playable in 1 and 2, but her name is Blue or Bleu maybe. And she's not human. She's a Naga, so she has like a snake body and then the upper torso of a woman.
Oh,
And I know she's in Breath of Fire 3 as a master, but I know that from reading things elsewhere and not from playing and not from getting far in Breath of Fire 3.
yeah.
So having her as an endless, I think, is a very cool choice by the Breath of Fire 4 writers.
Hmm.
And just let's we'll talk. I want to talk more about Urshan, but for now, let's stay on this endless thing. So
Yeah.
endless basically are gods invoked by rituals from people in the world of Breath of Fire 4, and Ryu and Fo Lu are two halves of the Yorae Dragon, which is maybe the strongest endless ever.
Yes, that's right. Um, I was gonna say while I was just
Sorry,
going through stuff.
but
No, no, don't
before I
worry.
interrupted you.
No, no, it's fine. There was a kind of trail of thought that I had while I was talking. Because actually, all of the summoning dragons that you have, so like the wind dragon, the grass dragon, they all have dragon forms, but they also have like bipedal forms
Yeah,
or
and
two.
they're weird looking.
Yeah, some of them
Basically
are weird.
all of
Like
them.
yeah,
But yeah, you first meet them in their bipedal form, or well,
hmm,
not always, but there's a gathering of all of their bipedal forms after you meet the wind dragon. He basically calls all of his buddies, and you talk to them, and they're like, "All right, if you find us, we'll agree to help you."
yeah. So I wonder whether dragon is just a term to describe the physical manifestation of the entirety of the god's power. I think that's if you understand what I mean. So it's like this is me not powerful in human inverted commas form, and then when they're a dragon, then it's their actual form with their powers unleashed and everything.
I
That's
okay.
yeah, that might be maybe that's what I'm thinking because obviously because the dragons have two different forms, is they can't be both. But so the thing is we never get the whole explanation because Deus is never like what happens to Deus at the end of the game? Is she just gonna sit inside Urshin? We don't know. We don't know whether she's gonna get her body back. We don't know whether she has another form, and it's never really skirted around. And Ryu, even though he obviously things happen at the end, and we'll get to the end, and depending on what you do at the end of the game as well, he changes briefly, but not for very long, and it's only very minor. So I would have definitely liked some more on that because I do like the idea of the endless or this mystical group of people.
Yeah, and honestly, if the Breath of Fire series had continued and they stayed, consistent with the mythology of Breath of Fire 4, the idea of Ryu being a new endless in the world and starting like every game that way and just, and saving the world or changing the world uh, as sort of an endless and like the larger mythology of Breath of Fire being these endlesses passing between
Yeah,
worlds, I think is kind of awesome.
yeah, really.
I mean, in the way where like the Xenoblade games are about worlds being created and destroyed, and are ostensibly fit in the same universe that way. If Breath of Fire had done that and made the endless part of the larger mythology of all of the games, that is fascinating to me because the idea of you know it adds stakes to it when you think of the story as clashes between the gods that are and the gods are so powerful that they can pass between worlds is I don't know it's just it is all very cool to me and I like it a lot
Mm.
and I would have liked if there was more dragons in the game, more endlesses. I mean, more time controlling Fo Lu. There's yeah, I just wanted more out of Breath of Fire, and near the beginning of the episode, I posited the question to you: did this game feel short to you? And the reason I asked that was because I 100% believe it. I think that there's empty space in the map in this game, and there's uh, both the world and the characters and the sort of greater story all seems like there was more room to work around in. Yeah, I wanted this game to be bigger and longer, which is usually not the case for retro encounter games. Usually, when it's like 2 days before we record an episode and I'm trying to beat the final boss, I wish these retro encounter games were shorter, and this was the opposite of that.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's yeah. Usually we have in instances where we're like, no, we want it to end. There's nothing really bad about Breath of Fire 4 either. I don't think there's anything I outright dislike about it too much. Maybe niggles, but I
Oh yeah,
just didn't want it to end. Like, it's quite surprised when you get to the end of the game and it doesn't peter out per se, but the final moments are you going into the capital, and then you just kind of walk into the temple, and it just kind of mulls along towards the end through the whole thing. But I just wish there was more of it. Really, I'm in the same boat as you, even
yeah.
having played it before.
I mean, it's probably because you and I have played a lot of Japanese RPGs, and we're used to lengthy epic finales or dungeons that take hours,
Yeah, I think
or
this.
games that even last 60 plus hours. And this has none of those things. It has a lot of great JRPG stuff in it, but it all feels like truncated versions of those things, or at least at times.
Yeah, it does. Especially this year where nearly every JRPG has been 60 plus hours, and It's
Yeah, geez,
nice
I
to
mean,
play something that's really different. And
in 2017, people may have played a Persona 5 or a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or a oh, I don't know, or a Nier
Zelda.
Automata, and all of those are in the like 80 plus range. I think Nier's a little bit less, a little
Near,
shorter. Nier's
yeah,
shorter than
near
Persona, or
30. Yeah.
but it's like as RPG fans, we're conditioned to having these long epic games, and Breath of Fire 4 is is shorter but feels like it should be longer,
Mm,
which is not a feeling I'm used to having. Because games that are short are usually action games that end before they really wear out their welcome. Like
yeah.
like Portal is sort of a perfect 5 hour game, and and if it had been too much longer, people might have gotten bored with it. But with this game, with Breath of Fire 4. I thought it could have been longer, and one other reason that I think we've touched on but haven't gone deep into is I really like the six main characters of this game,
Hmm.
and I feel like they're shortchanged. Like Skias only has one really story moment, and that is one real story moment, and that's early in chapter two, or no, around halfway through chapter two,
Hmm.
where he decides to stop serving the Ludian minister that's trying to stop you or kill you. He throws the money back at the minister and becomes a permanent party member from there on. But after that, he has almost no meaningful dialogue. He's just a
Yeah,
quiet member of your party that maybe chimes in during a story moment.
for sure. And Ursula is very similar, who is the
Hmm.
last party member you get at the beginning of chapter 3. She is your gateway into the capital, but all she does really is kind of prove that she's I know Cray has like kind of Cray and everybody kind of pokes fun at her because she's so serious. She has a fear of ghosts as well, and she just doesn't really get any time until like the end of chapter 4 when her uncle is or grandfather is dying. That's the only kind of moment that she gets. And
Yeah,
it,
and she's fun when you have her. Like she has
yeah,
like serious military lady personality, which is you can find characters like that in other RPGs and anime, I suppose. But like she has a distinctive look. She's good in battle. Like one that we mentioned how good the character animations are in the previous episode. Her running animation is lower to the ground and sort of more fox like or dog like than others.
yeah,
So like it communicates a different feeling for how her character moves, and when she does have dialogue, she's very likable. Like I think we could have spent more time with Ursula, and
mm,
I think maybe the most unique character in the game is Urshin, who is a robot housing a goddess. And when you realize this, and the goddess temporarily leaves the robot has retained enough power to have its own personality, and you realize that you've been misunderstanding the robot, and when the robot calling itself Urshin is really using the word Urshin, which means master in another language, and referring to the goddess.
yep,
And sometimes later in the game, when Deus has something to say, Urshin will stay up and Deus's portrait will pop up and will say something, and then Urshin says, "So says Urshin," and it's like I could have used more dialogue from all of those characters. Skias, Ursula, and Urshin, I think, get less story screen time um, than Nina, Cray, and Ryu. But
hmm,
I liked them so much that I think I would have given a dedicated subplot to each of them in the second half of the game. I would have been
yeah.
100% fine with that.
Yeah, you'd normally get that, wouldn't you? It's
Right.
almost like you're expecting it. You're expecting, especially when you get to the Western continent, the Asian side of the game, it's like you want something with Ursula, or you want to know why Skius is following you, like, and you want to know what's Ursula going to do after, you know, depending on what ending you get, what is Ursula going to do? So it's kind of, yeah, you just want more from them, and
All
they
I
are a
want
delightful bunch, yeah,
all I
because
wanted was a like samurai stare down showdown between Skius and like a former master or former rival.
yes,
Yeah,
that would have
right.
been so good. That would have.
I would have been all over that. I would have been jumping up and down, holding my Vita, playing that.
Mhm.
But instead, Skius is a almost a non-participant in the second half of the story.
Yeah,
Um, and
shame.
but because I think these character designs are cool and the character moments we do get out of them are good, I wanted more. And I even like Ursula, even though she's a she you don't even meet her until the beginning of chapter 3.
Their personalities crafted by the design and the way that they move and all their
Mm.
interactions, which is really clever. And the fact that we do love them as much as we do, even though they don't get the screen time they deserve, is really a credit, I think. But it's
Yeah,
a shame as well. It's just disappointing in a
and
way.
it's not only in dialogue and character design. It's like you said, it's how they move. They have different running animations and different battle animations that really communicate personality. That is, I mean, it's a short list of games that are really good at doing that. Like you have your Chrono Triggers of the world with just outstanding sprite work that create a cast that feels diverse and likable. But Breath of Fire 4's art and designs and animations improve everything around them.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's even funny. This game has an amusing sense of humor sometimes. You know those big sort of bulbous floating heads called gongs or gong heads.
Yes.
Those whenever you hit one of them with a physical attack, they like blow up to double their normal size and go all bug-eyed and
Yeah.
flicker. It's like even the enemy attack animations and reaction animations are so rich and cool.
It's yeah, it's so good. And it is such a shame. It's so
This game is great, but it should be epic, and
yeah.
it could be epic with, if they I'm sure they just ran out of money or were eager to start working on their next project or something.
Mm.
And we even mentioned in the previous episode that they reuse a lot of Breath of Fire 3 assets and systems. And
Which it's yeah, it's
and
fine, but
isn't
it's
there only like
yeah.
one? Isn't there only 1 year between Breath of Fire 3 and 4 in
I
terms of release
believe
dates?
I believe so. They did want to get it out as soon as possible, and I know there was a rush development and there's a rush localization as well. So
Mm,
you know how just going into it, you know how when you use Ryu's dragon transformations and they have spells,
yes.
those magic spells, the elemental ones, are Korean. They're
Yeah, yeah,
not English.
yeah. They use
They just left
they
them.
use the Korean word for dragon in the names of the other endless.
That's right, yeah. And
So
they left it in. They wanted to translate it, but because of time, they thought, we'll leave it for authenticity. So it's like just it's just tiny little things like that that make you think that Capcom were a little bit pressed for time and they wanted to just get something out of the gate before because it comes out relatively late in the PS1's life cycle as well. It's like very near the end. It's the
yeah,
last year
I mean, how
really.
crazy was the year 2000 for RPGs?
Crazy. Chrono
Like
Cross came out as well that
Chrono
year, didn't
Cross,
it?
FF9, Skies of Arcadia. I mean, that was the whole
Oh yeah.
summer of RPG for Square. So they had the that's also the Legend of Mana and Threads of Fate year.
Oh
But yeah,
wow.
like you had the PS2 and FF10 on the horizon, and just a bunch of games dropping at once. This 2000 seemed like sort of a last hurrah year for the PS1.
Yeah.
So, and that's 100% why I didn't play this when it came out because I bought a PS1 in 2000. I was a late adopter, and I was eager to get to all these RPGs, and Breath of Fire 4 wasn't even on my radar because there were so many I was eager to get to.
Yeah. It did come out late and I remember it being my last PS1 RPG, so yeah, I just it frustrates me. I want more out of Breath of Fire 4, but I love what it's got, and I think I understand why I love it so much because I know it can be so much more, and I can come up with ideas and things like that. But it's beloved by the fans. Like 3 and 4 are often they're pretty much hand in hand the best two, and there's no like better or worse answer out of the two of them. And
This is
you
so much better than Breath of Fire 2. Like Breath of Fire
fun
2
time.
is an okay Super Nintendo RPG, and but has a lot of caveats and annoying parts. And Breath of Fire 4 is just top to bottom way better.
Hmm.
And
For sure.
now we're doing a little bit of we're a little bit gushy this episode because both of us have very recently finished it. I finished it last night. In fact, pretty late last night. If you look at my Twitter, I tweeted the Breath of Fire 4 thing at about 3 a.m. because that's when it happened.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, putting aside how much we like this, we did mention that in the previous episode, this game is dense with mini games and with sort of side systems to engage in.
Hmm.
And I don't. And I mentioned I didn't do any fishing in the first chapter of the game. I did some later because the game makes you fish a few times. That's when I learned how to fish, in the middle of chapter 3. But um, the systems are optional and sometimes so ancillary that or not ancillary, more like auxiliary, that I didn't even find them or cared to engage in them.
No,
Like,
exactly.
like fishing is almost totally optional. I think you have to catch one fish in the tidal flats area to get the plot moving along.
Yeah.
And but it's all optional but powerful. Like the rewards for fishing are very very high, and there's a whole system of finding fairies to live in the fairy village that you liberate in chapter 2. And I didn't I talked to the fairy at my base and told the fairies, oh, you two work on farming and you work on building, and that was the end of my engagement with the fairy village system.
Did you only do it once
I did it
then?
once, and it's like I
Ah,
I, I, I don't know what kind of awards this will yield later, but I'm just not going to deal with this. And
yeah.
the whole skill system that we did talk about last time, how you can learn skills from enemies by defending and observing. There's I didn't abandon it, but I basically I did much more skill learning in the first half than the second half because I was able to get by with my team's natural skills for the most part.
Yeah, it's they're not needed. That's the thing. And like the fairy side quest does get you some good items. Like I think you can do some trading with them later on. I did some of it and I built a few houses and plots of land and did a fair amount. I think I had about 70 or I think you can have quite a few fairies. I'm pretty sure I had over 50 fairies at
What?
least. Yeah, you can have loads. They just I went back into my base at one point. Might not have been
I
50.
thought there was only going to be like 8 because of the size of the menu.
No, you have like a good number. I might only be like 20 to 30, but
Oh
I had a
boy.
load. So I went back in one day. The way you get them is by setting them to do the right objectives. And also, when you're wandering around, if you go into some of the areas on the maps and where question marks pop up, occasionally there'll be a fairy that's being attacked by enemies. And what you have to do is kill the enemies.
Oh, I did find
Yeah,
one of those,
yeah. And if you,
I thought I was gonna get just go doing it for food
yeah,
because
so
it
you,
I
ah,
thought it was a hunting mini game because the fairy even said, oh, if you kill them in one hit, the meat will be better, and it's like, oh, this is just for food. Well, whatever, I'm getting out of here. Uh,
oh, so
so I
if you
didn't save the fairy.
So if you give them the food, then I think they multiply and there's more fairies because you're helping them hunt basically. So
So that's how fairy
yes,
reproduction works. They
exactly. Ribs.
I do like ribs, like with like a nice Memphis dry rub on them. Oh yeah.
You're a
Do
fairy.
they have a lot of American barbecue in the UK? I really have no idea.
No, not too much. I
That's too
think
bad.
it's getting big in London, but yeah, it's not. It'll come down here eventually, and if I'm in London, I'll hunt some down next time I'm around, or
Well,
I'll
if
just come and find some in America when I
yeah,
come over.
yeah. If you visit America and you and I are in the same town, I'm gonna find good barbecue for you. Hopefully,
Find good barbecue. Okay.
that would work. But anyway, so back to some of the systems in place. There's also a spell combo system, which is probably the optional thing I engaged the most in because
Mm,
I casted Sea Moon by going Burn into Cyclone or Fire Blast into Cyclone probably
yeah,
100 times
yeah, for
because
sure.
like and I think I even described the spells combo system inaccurately in the previous episode. It's casting the order of cycle of spells is fire to wind to water to earth back to fire,
Hmm.
and you can and the other elements are like, sort of like explosions, then lightning, then I guess mud slides, and
One's
then like eruptions.
Yeah, so one's like it's lightning. Oh God, so is it
Casting
fire?
wind and then water is lightning. Water then earth is like a mudslide avalanche thing.
Yeah,
Earth and fire is like volcanic eruptions, and
yeah, it's disaster.
fire then wind is explosions. And by the end of the game, I was using Giga Flare almost every single fight that had more than one enemy.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost mandatory, especially towards the end of the game, where
It
there's
was great. I love it. It's the only it's almost like an easier to use version of the combined skills in Persona 2, which isn't
yeah,
I like those in Persona 2, and if anything this is communicated more clearly and easier. But yes, but spell combos are great, and I probably should have done more skill hunting because I know there's powerful stuff I missed out on because I
yeah.
mean I still had Cray mostly using regular attacks against like end game bosses.
Oh, I did. I didn't use Cray very much apart from, well, I'd say buffing. but
Yes.
most of the endgame bosses have sanctuary, which wipes out buffs. So by the end of it, he just became like, if I was running out of AP, I would just
Yeah.
swap him in to be
Yeah,
a
so
wall.
swap him in. I would swap him in, have him do regular attacks
Yeah.
while Skius or Ursula was having their AP being restored, because all of the AP restoring items, which are super rare, there are none of them.
Nope.
Those are all for reused dragons,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Fairies.
yeah, oh,
That's where
and
you get them from.
oh
That's where you
damn, that's oh. So
I didn't
I
have
should
many
have done the
either.
damn fairy village so I could get some wisdom fruit or something.
Well, I didn't have that many either because I just didn't really think about it. And then when I got to the final boss, I thought, okay, I'll be all right. And to be honest, I just swapped everybody in and out. I used the fruit maybe once on Ryu and then used one on Nina because her healing spells at that point, she gets a really good healing spell at level 39, I think, which uses 50 AP and it fully heals
I think I
everyone.
literally beat the game with her at level 38, so I never got to use that.
But yeah, so yeah, the wisdom fruit thing is a bit of frustrating, but at least we discussed at length last episode. There's a really useful recharge thing, which is very useful
Oh
in
no,
extremely long boss fights,
yeah, yeah.
which there are.
The recharge thing makes a lot more sense. I think I would have liked it if the recharged AP would be saved permanently, but I think that might have been too powerful. Then you
Mm,
wouldn't have you would never need AP healing items in dungeons ever if you could do that. But for boss
no,
fights, it is so important.
it's very important. It's a really neat system, but it's
and
yeah.
and uh and it really got me to appreciate Urshin in the second half of the game, because Urshin's like the worst character in the first half. It's she doesn't do anything as well as any other character, but in the second half of the game, she learns 4 level 3 spells, and she recharges AP faster than every other character. So
She's so good.
you can just pop her in and out, use powerful magic willy nilly, and it only takes 2 turns for her to get ready to cast those spells again.
Yeah,
So I would use Urshin to like absorb damage while I was trying to heal or protect Ursula or Skius or Ryu, and then yeah, like the combat mechanics and the skill mechanics and the spell combos and all the different characters interact in a way that I want to play more games like this. It was like when all the systems come together, it is so fun. Um, doing even normal encounters. I didn't really get sick of random encounters in this game, which is a something that I get annoyed with easily. I mean, playing games in 2017, I think the random encounter system is antiquated and sometimes really damages my enjoyment of a game. But unless there's a smart implication of it, like Bravely Default letting you turn them off or on. But
mm.
uh, with with this, like the regular combat was so much fun, and none of the dungeons were really slogs, so random encounters didn't even bother me. Like this game made me appreciate random encounters more, which is insane.
If you have good combat, then I think it's a plus. And plus, it's quite regulated as well compared to some examples that we could give that have much higher rates. But
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, shoot, I just mentioned Persona 2 a few minutes ago.
Oh yeah.
That game is really hurt by its high random encounter rate, but not so much Breath of Fire 4.
No, that's a good thing. With the combo system as well, it's not just about mixing elements together. And one thing I did for the final bosses, if you cast three spells of the same element, they get stacking damage. So if you cast the best fire spell
Oh,
with Urshin, then do the best fire spell with Ursula, it gets an extra hit for like 300 extra damage. And
oh,
then,
okay. I
and then,
noticed that happen with healing spells sometimes. If I cast
yes,
healing spells twice in a row, there'd be a kick. There'd be like an extra. I thought that was like a critical
exactly.
hit, but that comes from
No,
spell combos.
it does come from spell combos, and you can top it up as well by casting one of like Ryu's dragon forms fire spells, which will get an extra 2 hits.
I wish I had
So
known that, because I would have 100% spammed fire spells on some of the late game bosses.
the final bosses are all like water based, so it's really, really useful. You just burn through a lot of
Most of them are. I think the ice lion buddy of his definitely is water.
yeah,
But
the
the but
last dragon is as well because it's
oh,
set in
right.
Solu.
But the death dog I think was earth element.
Oh, maybe I don't know. I
You
just
know who I'm talking about with the ice lion and the death dog, right?
yeah, dude, yeah,
I don't remember their names. They're very cool boss designs, and
they are.
and if anything, I thought it was almost sweet when like cute kind of sweet when during different Folu segments, the lion is greeting him at his tomb, and the dog greets him when he visits the capital for the first time. It's like, oh man, I want to go on an adventure with Folu and his two buddies.
Yeah. Oh,
Cause they,
he's so good. I
mm-hmm.
think let's go on to Foley now because
Okay.
he's got some really he has probably the best character arc in the entire
His
game.
arc is great. I wanted more out of Folu. I mentioned how he was probably my favorite character in the previous episode, and it only went even further in that direction playing the rest of the game.
Mm,
For all the same reasons we mentioned before. Like, his design is cool, his movements are stylish, and and it's fun, playing with a level 60 character when your main team is level 15 or whatever. But
mm.
uh, like and his arc is so crazy. He's immediately being hunted by the descendants of the kingdom he founded right when he wakes up in his tomb, and it's unclear why at first, but really it's but um this might be skipping ahead a little bit. Like, why do you think the the people of the empire like immediately wanted to kill Folu? Was it because they were afraid of how powerful he was, or they were unwilling to give up their power, or was it more of a philosophical thing? They didn't want to be. They wanted to, they wanted freedom and not to be under the thumb of a god.
So if I remember, going back to chapter two, the end of chapter two, where the
Hmm.
Yorae Dragon is explained,
Right.
there's two halves to it. So one half is going to save the world, and the other half is going to destroy the world.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
Ryu
I didn't.
and Folu are one and the other. So Folu is the half that they suspect is the half that's going to kill the world,
I
basically.
see.
And
Okay, so all right, I glossed over that part of the Yorai Dragon prophecy. I think because I was under the impression um that they were going to unite and then sort of decide. And Folu decided that humans were unworthy because of how the Empire treated him and because of what happens to Mami.
yeah, so that's essentially what happens at the end of the game because I think
Because
he's so
I
conflicted.
thought maybe Folu was a benevolent dragon and was just an all powerful god. Okay, well, I'll rephrase. I thought through most of the game, I thought Folu is a super powerful dragon god, and would eventually, either rule over the humans or judge them, but then ends up judging them because of how horrible he sees they are. But
Mm.
I guess destruction was in his nature from the beginning, and I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of. It doesn't come across though, does it? Because like you said, many people think like root for Folu because of the Empire's hunting him because they want his power. They don't want him to destroy the world, kind of thing. They're scared of that.
And
But
and
Folu,
I think the ruling class of the empire doesn't want to give up power as well.
no, exactly. And so he's humanized quite a lot, especially through chapter two. And you mentioned Marmee, and the Marmee sequence with Folu is kind of touching, and it's kind of not
It's
directly hinted.
adorable.
It's so cute, isn't it? But it's kind of hinted on that they have some kind of a relationship, and she's really defensive of him. She will lie through her teeth to get him saved, and
I think she
that's
is. I think she's straight up infatuated with him, and
definitely,
he is. It's hard to tell if he reciprocates her or not, but at least
yeah.
but at least appreciates her helping him, and
Mm.
has some sympathy and affection for her. At least I don't know how much I want to look into this. I might have to publish some Folu slash Mammy fan fiction later. But but what happens to her where her home is seized by the emperor, and then they sacrifice her to their curse cannon empowered by human souls.
Oh,
Oh,
and then they fire it directly at Folo as
yeah.
well, which is so up until the point where he meets Mommy, he doesn't like humans. He does want to destroy it, but that moment where he's staying with Mommy and she's like,
Like
and the bit with Bunyan as well. So
mhm.
like all the time that the humans are trying to look after him and that he's trying to push them away, but at the same time he's kind of having this crisis of hang on a minute, not all humans are the same.
Mhm.
And then when obviously he's hit by the hex cannon and fused by Mommy, that bit he is where because he starts laughing or something like that, and that
He's
is the
like,
moment
nope, I
where he
was right
goes
all along.
crazy.
I gotta wipe all these humans out. All right, let's
Basically,
go to the capital and kick some ass. Um,
Oh, yeah.
how satisfying was it to tear through those last couple of enemies before you meet the Emperor?
Amazing. So
Uh,
that's the thing. Like your goal for most Ryu's goal for most of the game, or some of the game, is essentially the same as Folu's because you both don't want the Empire to take power. You don't want the Empire to win the war. So Folu is effectively taking out that entire. Like he's taken out the entire castle. He kills the king. He kills all the soldiers. He
I
destroys the
don't think
entire town.
I don't, at least in the version we played, I don't think you see him kill the Emperor because
You
I,
don't.
I don't remember where I read this. I think I was looking up some other stuff, and some guide or some forum post mentioned a cut scene, not a cut scene, a removed scene, a cut space scene, um, where because in the version that we played, we see the Emperor like pretend to cede power to Folu, but then he's like surprise, and he stabs Folu with a sword, and then it like cuts to black, and you're back with Ryu again. But I think there was a scene of Folu straight up murdering the Emperor after that.
Yeah, he decapitates him.
Well, now I'm furious we don't get that scene because that sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
He full on decapitates him. He just slices his head off. It's really quite
Does he
something.
remove the sword from his own body to do that?
I can't remember. I've seen it. I
Is that
watched it at the point after I did that story sequence, and it was a few weeks ago now. But
mm.
yeah, they took it
I
out
gotta
because it's too
YouTube that on
violent.
the Japanese version or something because I that
Hmm.
that's I was wondering. I mean, because in the version we played, we see the Emperor stab him and then it fades to black. So I thought, oh, later are we gonna see like Folu in jail or something? Because that doesn't end with Folu winning.
No, exactly. But when you know the censorship in it, then
Yeah.
you know that he's dead. So
See, this is the kind of censorship that does make me upset. I don't care very much about language censorship that doesn't change the meaning of the meaning of the conversation, or
mm,
image censorship that isn't that doesn't change the meaning of the game. When they changed all the crosses to tridents in the old Dragon Quest localization censorships, I don't think that's meaningful.
yeah.
Or changing a character's costume, I think most of the time is not meaningful. But cutting an actual scene that seems important for the plot, that's the censorship I don't prefer.
Yeah, I mean, even if they'd like redone it just to show him stabbing him, would have been fine. Like, I kind of understand the removal of the decapitation, but you're losing out an important story segment because, like you said, you interpreted it that Foley would be in prison, and that
Yeah,
would change the context of the story
I interpreted that of
completely.
him losing or being captured.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite a big thing. Like you said, all the other instances that you don't mind, like censorship, and there's a lot of that in Breath of Fire 4 because
Yeah.
there is a scene earlier on to jump back. You remember the bit where you're getting on the ship with Ursula and Nina, and they have to go inside the
Hmm.
bottom. So before that, the captain of the ship or some of the crew members say to them, you need to prove your manhood. And Ursula drops her trousers down
Ah!
to prove that she has balls. And it's like,
Wait.
what?
Ursula. Wait. But Ursula is a man.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I was like, okay, I don't have the physical balls, but I have the metaphorical balls
Yeah,
to perform this action.
I am a woman, but I will do this. I'm proving you my womanhood, but
Right.
I
Okay.
still
Okay.
have
No. No.
balls.
That's a badass scene that I wish was not cut. But from the way you phrased it, I was a little bit confused
Apologies.
about as to Ursula's sex for just a second.
Yeah,
But no, I follow you now. Yeah.
there's
That's another scene I wish would stay in the game because that is great.
that's quite cool, isn't it? I mean, I don't know whether I love it, the idea of it, but it's an interesting thing because it does prove that she is willing to do anything to get back to the capital. I guess the only other one that's worth pointing out, we've already talked about Skiss's
Right.
alcoholism that's been cut
I
out.
I don't think that's a meaningful change. I mean, having him be
No,
stammering and awkward isn't so bad. Although I would have enjoyed a drunk samurai dog, I guess.
why wouldn't you? Like drunk samurai dog.
Hmm.
But there's another
Three
scene,
things I love right there. Drunk samurai dog.
but in the same town, you might remember this because some of it isn't censored out. So there's a scene where Ryu puts his hand up and it touches Ursula's chest. And in the Japanese version, there's some dialogue that acknowledges it, and Ursula's like, "Oh my god, get off me!"
Oh,
But it's completely taken out. It
I
just happens, and
I
there's
don't I
no
don't even remember
reaction.
that.
No, it's such a minor thing that
Yeah.
it's strange. Some of the like say that maybe if you're going to cut out the dialogue, cut out the accidentally touching thing. But yeah, like I think the Folu decapitation is probably the one scene that does really change a lot and is a
Mhm.
really big omission from the developers. There's so many ways you could have changed it. Like I'm sure
Even
there's
if they had
another
had it, if they had it like fade to black, or if they had I
like
don't know,
even a
like
noise,
yeah
even like a sound, like a scream.
yeah, like a fade to black with a noise, or fade to black and then just a dialogue box or something,
Yeah,
just to at least help explain what's happening, because it was an important omission, and it confused me a little bit, but I it was made clear shortly afterwards that, oh no, Folu's is tearing up the capital, so I guess he's not captured or dead.
no,
But
but
yeah,
yeah,
like I mean, discussing censorship in video games is a bit of a hot button topic the past year or two, and I don't want to get into a discussion about that, but I think that the censorship in Breath of Fire 4, especially with that scene, is it, it changes the meaning a little bit too much. That I wish that the censorship job was not quite as strict
yeah.
in this
So
case.
I don't believe that the Japanese studio that made the game actually knew.
No,
So
no,
they were
no.
brought to
It wouldn't have been them. It would be the localizers, or maybe the worldwide publisher.
yeah, exactly. So I've not read the interview, but Makoto Ikehara, which I think she's involved or he's involved with producing or making the game or something, quite high up in the development team. They were brought to their attention and there's an interview in a magazine about it. So I'm not sure how they felt about it. I mean, like you said, they're quite major omissions and they do change the meaning of things. So I would like to go and read that. I never got time to do it beforehand. Like completely slipped my mind actually.
I might look into that later, but I'm not sure. But we're
Hmm.
talking about Folu and the capital. Let's go into chapter 4 a little. Wait, no. Let's go to the end of chapter 3, because um, chapter 3 is mostly the characters traveling on the western half of the map,
Hmm.
taking the long way around because the teleporting magic box got destroyed at the end of chapter 1. Uh, is basically just traveling through a bunch of towns while Folu is active near the capital and eventually reaching the capital. But um, before doing that, we mentioned this before, but they finally come to a head on the Alina storyline, right before you challenge Folu,
That's right.
because
When you
in
get
a
to
sort of
some
in a building in one of the western towns, you meet up with Yuna, the creepy mad scientist of the kingdom, and realize he's been experimenting on Elena to try to transform her into an artificial endless that
yeah,
can possibly face Folu.
you already hate Yuna at this point
Yeah.
because he's such a chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one he throws you in jail the first time, and then when Folu comes up to him, he agrees with the Emperor that I will give my life for you, basically, and then proceeds to fight Folu with a summoned creature, and then run away. And they're like, and he never makes appearance again until this section where Ryu and bump into him in a town. But you do hate him, and this bit especially because he's like, no, Nina's not in there. He's initially like, Nina's not there, and then he's like, no,
Elena, not
Nina
Nina.
is there. Oh, not Nina, Elena.
Yeah, it's
God,
confusing.
rhyming names. But
Parents, please don't give all of your children rhyming names or
I know,
alliterative names, because it's not cute. It's annoying. It's confusing.
but yeah, so he like misleads you, and then it's like, no, she's in there, but she's perfect, and they go in, and she's laying on the bed, and Cray, who you find out loves her, goes up to her
I thought it was communicated early that he was in love with Elena.
a little bit, isn't it? It's on the island, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or you at least get suggestions of it because people back in the Windia,
Mm.
they say that she's engaged to somebody. But
She's engaged to the Prince of Ludia, and Ludia, which
yeah,
I at first thought was the Good Kingdom, turns out they're basically not that much different from the Empire.
no,
I don't know if you even meet the Prince of Ludia. Maybe he's in the castle somewhere, and or you do meet him and I forget. But the big surprise to me was that Nina's in love with Cray.
yes. She's like, I think I love Cray, but I'm pretty sure Cray loves my sister.
And then when she says that, Ryu does like the anime pratfall faint animation. He's really shocked by it.
Well, yeah, because it's a big difference. Like Nina is normally linked with Ryu, I think,
And I think
or
Ryu
at
likes
least
Nina, which someone mentions later in the game, and
yeah.
it makes both of them blush because they're, anime teenagers.
Oh yeah, don't they say like, oh, your wife, come in, your wife or something? And then it's in the weird village with all the like, what are they? I want to say gnomes, but they're not. They're like miniature Captain Cavemans is
Oh
the only
yeah,
thing
yeah,
I can
yeah.
think
Oh
of.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a fine way to put it. All the multicolored miniature Captain Cavemans,
Hmm.
where they like, oh, my wife says that your wife is quite pretty too, Ryu, and Nina's like, oh
Yeah.
no, 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 we're not married. And then later in the game, I think maybe when in that checkpoint where you meet Yuna. Someone says, "Oh, it's okay. Nina's got Ryu wrapped around her finger," and Ryu's like, "Haha," and Nina's like, What do you mean?"
Yeah.
But so it's whatever. I thought that was the natural romantic pairing, but when Nina
Hmm.
mentions that she's in love with Cray, I was that was a surprise to me.
Hmm. But then you really get a feel for it in that scene, I
Yeah.
think,
Oh
at
yeah.
the end.
The scene with Elena is heartbreaking, and I thought that I figured that something was wrong with Elena from the beginning once you
Hmm.
see her, but when they pull the covers down and there's the hole going through the entire building, and it turns out that all the weird organs and bones and stuff that you traveled through were part of her. That was, oof,
Yeah.
that was a little unpleasant.
Yeah, the organ dungeons. What is it with organ dungeons?
I don't know. There's so many of them.
Doesn't Digital Devil Saga have an organ dungeon, or at least I don't know. I feel
Um,
like I don't know.
mm, eh, I don't remember one there.
I wonder if a Shimigami Tensei game does because it should do because it feels perfect.
Yeah,
But
I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah.
but yeah, like when you go to because it's like underground the training facility or the somewhere in that is it Atana Astana? That's
Astana.
where.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, where the hex cannon is, and you go underneath, and you already feel something's off because there are bits of meat lying around or flesh in the like underground bit, and then
Yeah.
when you go through that
It's like a
door,
grimy dungeon that has sort of like science experiments and zombies around. So it's a very creepy vibe already.
yeah, and
And
then you go
and
into
and
that room.
Yuna sort of reminds me of Hojo from Final Fantasy VII, because
Exactly.
he's a a completely unscrupulous scientist that is slimy and unpleasant, and you sort of want to kick to beat him up, but at least you get a boss fight against Hojo.
Yeah, you don't with Yuna, which is he lives. He's in the final moments of the game. It's ridiculous.
I
So
wanted the
what?
moment where Cray takes his giant club like a baseball bat and just just lays into Yuna. I needed that, but we never got
Yeah.
it. No
No, I
catharsis
don't.
at all.
No, and I'll get to catharsis and what he says later because I want to talk about the ending kind of as one wrapped thing. But
Mm.
like that whole sequence was horrible, and like I very vaguely remembered from the first time, and I don't remember having a particular reaction to it. But this time I was crying. Why not? Let's just say I was crying because I was. It was horrible because you've spent all this time going after Alina, and yeah, like you said, I was expecting her to be not good at all, but she's not good. And not only that, she can't feel anything. She can't feel pain. She just can't move. She is this thing. It's not even like, that she's a god. She's an endless, but not in the
And
sense that Ryu is.
she asks Cray to murder her in the most polite way possible.
And yeah, with the dragon sword that you get off of Yuna,
Mm-hmm.
which it's not. It's heartbreaking because you just never see it. And then the only thing you see, you have to fill in the blanks yourself anyway. That's not censored. Crow just walks out, and I think it fades to black, and it goes. Nina narrates like, "Oh, from that moment, I knew that I'd never see my sister again, or something."
Mm-hmm. Oh.
It's awful, and you think that was the first, that was the initial goal of the game, and it's failed, and but it is never, ever, ever gone back to, apart from just afterwards, where Cray's really sad, and Nina's really sad, and Urshan's trying to cheer her up, and it's
Yeah,
never.
it's it goes back to the thing where this game feels rushed. Like they did tie up that story thread, but I think it could have been elaborated upon, and I think there should have been some more closure with Yuna. But
Yeah,
like
I wouldn't.
it was an effective moment. Like I gasped when they took the covers off, and I was, and it was a very emotionally manipulative in a good way. The way that the game makes you sad with the with um, Elena's death. But I felt like that there was more meat there. They really could have spent more time around that moment. But
I think the payoff of being able to kill Yuna would have resolved it.
yes, that,
I
that
think
that's
that's
that's that's missing. I agree.
yeah, it would have
Yuna should have been the final boss battle of chapter 3.
for sure. Yeah, because
Like maybe you fight him at the castle gate or in the capital or something. Maybe after Death Dog, but you never get any of it. It feels like Yuna gets away with everything, and that's quite unsatisfying.
yeah, and chapter 3 is the only chapter I think that doesn't end with a boss fight. And for such a pivotal story moment, well, I mean, chapter 2 ends with an unwinnable boss fight.
And chapter 3 is it. Chapter 4 begins basically by walking to the castle right after you beat the Death Dog and Ursula's grandfather dies.
Yeah, so it's
Hmm.
it's a really excuse me, it's a really good story moment, but it just is left unresolved. Like I just wanted the satisfaction of revenge, and actually to mirror the adventure with Folu's story, that is an example of humans being horrible in what Yuna does, or not humans, humanity, let's say, because Yuna is a grass runner. So it's just like in those moments you kind of understand again why Folu feels the way that he does, and it's awful. Like to think that if more things had happened like that to Ryu, could he have gone through the same development? I mean, again, it depends on the ending because there are two endings to this game. So
Yeah, I mean, if Ryu had been hunted and had only met bad people after landing, could he have joined with Folu and they both happily end humanity? But instead, he met Nina, who is very pure and kind-hearted, and and decides to tag along with Nina and Cray trying to rescue Nina's sister.
hmm,
Like I guess they feel that way, and I assume the sort of the ending that we're supposed to choose is the one where you don't where you clash with Folu and have the last boss fight.
yeah, for definite.
Yeah, exactly. Like it could if um it could have gone very badly for everybody in the world except Folu if Ryu didn't have nice people to interact with at the beginning of his story.
Yeah, and you do have one of those moments. I'm going to rewind again a little bit to the end of chapter 2 when you're at the village where
Oh
you
God,
find out about the endless.
where that Imperial captain murders the entire village of children.
Yeah. And yeah, so you have to
What?
fight this. Yeah, it's horrible because Ursula's like, no, your only job is to, get the Yorae Dragon and go. And he murders all the children, all of the villagers. And
A village populated only by magical children, which is
yeah,
a little strange, but I mean, it doesn't make it any more okay that they all got murdered.
yeah, it just comes so out of the blue because until the end of chapter 2, Breath of Fire 4 is quite chirpy and very like, let's go on an adventure, let's save your sister kind of thing. And then it's like, how about mass genocide all of a sudden? And then Ryu goes absolutely bananas and turns into, oh, it's not Tyrant, it's the other one. It's Kaiser, the Kaiser
Yeah,
Dragon, and he goes to berserk and kills all the soldiers and everything. And from that point on, like the only thing that brings him back is Nina like hugging him and trying to bring him back to humanity. But from that point on, as an interesting gameplay mechanic, you always have the Kaiser Dragon on your transformation list.
but you won't be able to control Ryu, and he'll always
You
move
can't.
third if you
Yeah,
use him.
that's right. Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting thing. But yeah, there are some really Ryu goes through some awful things, and for him to come out assuming you do the good ending, for him to come out the way that he does, kind of just testament to him, and it's really clever. I like the way that it's all framed. Really,
Yeah, you really see all of these characters go through a lot and grow. At least Cray, Nina, and Ryu, and and even though the game doesn't have as much expository dialogue and text as I'd like, you do get the feeling that of these characters having difficult journeys, And yeah, I hate to keep hammering the point home and just being a broken record about it. I think I wanted more. I wanted this game to be longer because
Hmm.
I liked parts of it so much that it could have gone. I think that parts could have been fleshed out more. But let's change subjects a little bit. I never thought that this was a very challenging game for the most part. Like it feels the difficulty curve feels a little easier than average, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Until the end of chapter 3, where basically from the ice lion guy who I think is Lonku or Wanku.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
from Fulo's tomb
yeah, yes,
to
Ice Lion is. I've been calling them Ice Lion and Death Dog, but it's Wanku and Atur are the names
okay,
of those two guys. From
Wanku.
Wanku onward, every remaining boss battle I think is quite hard, and
Yeah,
and
really.
but part of that is on me because again, I don't have any good equipment from trading in fish because I haven't done any fishing throughout the game. I
Yeah.
didn't really know how fish points work, so I haven't upgraded any of my dragons.
Okay.
And also, I haven't been doing the fairy quest and don't have any rewards from that either. And I didn't find the master that lets me steal items, so I haven't gotten any of the stealing bonuses. I only found like 5 masters throughout the whole game.
Yeah,
Because
I
whenever I,
didn't really. Sorry, go on.
so it's cool. Whenever I met a new one, mostly the requirements for getting them was something I hadn't done.
Yeah, the game never forces you to go out of your way, and it's not like you don't have to do any of those things as well. So they're all doable, as proved by the fact that we're here. But I didn't. I was in the same position as you, but I was, I think, possibly slightly higher. I'd done some grinding, but they were still really challenging. And the one that really got me was the dice one at the
Oh,
end of the tomb, which has got a mechanic to it. So one of them, I think, is weak to physical attacks, and the other is weak to magic attacks, but you have to like hit them anyway to rotate them to make sure they don't use their special move, which basically wipes out your characters to 1 HP,
yeah,
if I remember.
I got lucky. I beat that one on the first try. I didn't think it was
Yeah, me
that hard,
too.
but I got hit with that move only once, but I was able to just
Uh,
swap out my entire party when
yeah,
that
so
happened, and it ended up working okay. But also because I've been using magic combos as like my main source of damage for the entirety of chapters 2 and 3. I killed the
yeah.
magic one pretty quickly and figured out, all right, I'll just switch to my physical characters with the second one. I got a
Yeah.
little bit lucky with that one, but with one coup, that was a big struggle for me, and I had to grind a little bit after him because I was terrified of what would come next. And Atur wiped me out because he
Oh,
has a death
really?
spell that can kill your entire party.
I never had that.
I think it was called Howling or something, but he has an instant death move
Oh,
that
it missed.
that really kicked my ass, and I had saved right before him, so it wasn't
Yeah.
when I had like 4 characters down, and it's like I don't want to use every item just to beat this guy, so I'm gonna reset, and
Mm.
I found some accessories that prevent death attacks, and then he was
Oh,
quite easy the second try, um
God, yeah.
but
That was quite unlucky.
yeah, but down the line, those 3 fights against Folu in a row at the end.
Yeah, so there's a dragon boss, isn't there, as well,
Yeah,
halfway through the final
there's
time. That was rough.
there's 2 dragon bosses that are before Folu, and the one of them is really brutal, and
Mm.
the
Well,
other one.
they're
Hmm? Sorry.
I was gonna say they're all kind of they're different stages of difficulty. So once you figure
Yeah.
out what you have to do with the first one, it's not too bad. But I remember doing like a really good combo and doing like 11,000 damage and you go, that's really good. And then it's got regen for 15,000. I went, hang on a minute, what? And then you had to look at the menu description and go, oh, right. So you just have to keep hitting it until it stops regenning. But the second one, I don't think the final boss is as hard. The problem is you go into it straight after the
Yeah.
penultimate.
It, it,
And the
I had a lot of trouble with the second one because I'd used
mm,
more than half of Ryu's MP on the first one.
yeah, definitely. I was in the same situation. So I was kind of struggling and crawling my way through the second one because of the first one, which has, it gets easier as you go along again. So it's
Hmm.
similar. So I can't remember. Is it dark something? Dark gate? Dark? Its best move that it uses
Oh,
nearly all the time.
I don't remember. I had Nina using Vitalize almost every turn because of the threat of that move. I,
Yeah. So the way it works is the lower its health, the less damage it does, like the dragon attacks. So the lower down you got its health, the less damage it would do with that particular attack. So it does get a little bit easier as you go through it. But by that point, you're already doing shed loads of damage because you don't want to take all of the damage earlier on. And then you've already used up most of your AP, and then it's like, oh, here you go, you can fight Folu as like the Yorae Dragon, basically, or almost. So it's brutal. They're the thing is they're like difficult, but they're more endurance tests than anything else. So
Yes, mhm.
if you're in the second,
Both Wanku and the final boss were really just tests of endurance that I had to use a lot of very careful character switching to get their AP up.
mm, yeah, so I made it so like Skias would always be in one group and Nina would always be in another, and they very rarely be in at the same time because they both had healing moves and they both have revival moves.
Hmm.
And I had Cray. If I was worried about using my AP, I would get him to use an item. And then all the other times I could, I would just be comboing fire spells because they were doing like 6,000 damage a turn. So,
Yeah, I was
like,
mostly doing fire into wind combos, either with some combination of Ursula, Nina, and Urshin to
mm,
try and trigger Giga Flare for the second hit.
yeah.
That which would probably not as effective as using three fire spells in a row, but
So, yeah.
uh, but and with the third character either Nina healing or Skias healing or putting in Cray attacking just so other people could get their AP back in the back line. It was a very interesting, like these long boss battles. I think are good, and they really get the players can get mileage out of the character switching mechanic that I like quite a bit,
Mm.
and they feel like epic struggles, which is good. But I think that the struggles were considerably more difficult for me because I had like equipment that you could buy in the capital for all of my characters.
Oh, me too. Although I picked up some stuff in the dungeon, but
Oh, right.
I
I think I
did
did too. But I don't think I had absolute best in-game stuff,
no.
which was my fault because I didn't really engage in fishing or crafting. I didn't even find the crafting system. I I'm not sure I'm not sure how it works because I collected a bunch of crafting items, but
Yeah,
it's like can't I make these into something? Is there a
I
crafting menu? But I never found it.
I didn't go into it either.
No,
It's all kind of
yeah,
just non-mandatory and hidden away a little bit. But
yeah, but
yeah.
it's just another thing where there's a lot of systems in place, and this game feels bigger than it like feels
Hmm.
incredibly large and deep, but doesn't communicate its depth very well, and doesn't have a story depth to meet the gameplay depth always.
No, exactly. So going back to combos,
Hmm.
there was another thing you could do. So you can do three-tier combos. So you said you do wind into fire.
Yeah.
So if you use the best fire spell on one of Ryu's dragons, you get another spell.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So
missed that one. I guess.
yeah, they don't explain it very
Hmm.
well. I don't think they explain it at all, and it was only by digging around a little bit online. There's a magic combo FAQ somewhere. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. There's like a fourth tier of these magic combos,
What?
and yeah, so you do it by casting. Say you do Cyclone with Nina, and then do is it Inferno or with Ursula?
No, it has to be fire then wind if you want the
Oh,
combo.
sorry, yeah. So Inferno, and then yeah, and then you do the wind spell, Cyclone, and then you do it with the equivalent third level spell on Ryu's Dragon. You'll get an upgraded version of Giga Flare, which I can't
Oh.
remember what it's called. Yeah, so they're even more powerful, which I don't think the game particularly goes out of its way to
No,
tell you.
yeah, I never figured that out. When I was barraging on people, I would have Ryu use the breath attack and have the other two use a spell combo,
That's the most
which was usually Giga Flare or Thunderstorm, depending on which characters were I was using.
yeah, and that's the most effective thing to do really, because the dragon breath spells don't use any AP, and 9 times out of 10 will cause upwards of 8,000 damage anyway, especially if they're part of a combo. But it was just
But
toying around as well. And yeah.
there's so much depth hidden all around that I feel like, and again, I mentioned it near the beginning of this episode. I avoided some side stuff in the end because I had to finish this game in time. That I don't know. This game feels like it should be bigger than it is. So, and I'm not
Mm,
disappointed because I liked it almost the whole way. But there's like even though this game is excellent, it feels like there's unrealized potential here. And I guess I'm gonna go into because we've been talking quite a bit already. I want to go into some prognostication or some outside the story discussion because Breath of Fire 4 is so good, and a lot of people also like 3, and we talked about how appealing this world and these characters are. Um, how much of a tragedy is Breath of Fire 6?
Yeah, isn't it awful? I mean, it was bad enough. It's kind of sad, isn't it? We've gotten to the stage where a mobile sequel is like the death knell for a series. So the only series that's really bucked that trend is Tales because the mobile game for Tales is quite popular. But Breath of Fire, you've got Star Ocean that's there, Valkyrie profile, and it's
I mean, Final Fantasy's mobile offerings are not the best. Even though I know FFRK and FF RK and BE both have fans, I'm not going to call those triumphant.
no. But like those ones in particular, and specifically Breath of Fire 6, because I remember seeing artwork for that game and going, "Oh, it looks so good," but it's a mobile game in Japan. And then this year, I think it's ended, hasn't it?
Yeah, the
So
servers died in well this year we're almost into 2018 as of recording, but this is going to be our first 2018 episode officially. So in September 2017 the servers died. Were killed off.
and that's kind of it, and it's just kind of sad because, like I said, four has got such a rich world and it needed building on. Five, Breath Dragon Quarter is kind of the outlier in that some people love it and some people hate it,
Yeah,
and it
it's a
took the
it's a very
series in a
different kind of RPG, but it's
mm,
a little divisive. But some people do love it. I have not
yeah.
played it, so I don't have an opinion. But
It's got its fans on the site. I know Rob Fenner is a big fan of it,
yeah,
so
okay, we have a big sort of site document over potential future retro encounter episodes, and there is a card for Breath Dragon Quarter that a lot of people are interested in, which is interesting to me. But I have not played it.
mm. But like the it went on such a different direction, and then the series went on like a 10-year break, and then they came back with a mobile game that lasted less than a year, and it's a
And
real death knell.
yeah, that's unfortunate, but I don't think it's totally dead because this is Capcom we're talking about, and
Exactly. As proven.
like Capcom has had such a weird couple of years. Full disclosure, maybe I've mentioned this in the podcast before, maybe I haven't. Capcom was my favorite game developer for probably 10 or 15 years. It was like number one Capcom, number two Square for a lot of my growing up. And that was because like Mega Man was one of the first game characters I really fell in love with. I adored all of the Mega Man and Street Fighter games for the Super Nintendo and PS1 and in arcades, I guess for some of those. And I had a Monster Hunter phase where it was the game I played the most for a few years. I still am a bit of a Street Fighter 5 apologist, which confuses people. But I love Capcom, and they've had so many ups and downs in the 2000s and 2010s that I think they're in a okay place right now because
They're
Monster
in a good
Hunter,
place.
yeah, yeah, like Monster Hunter World looks amazing, and their Monster Hunter games have been extremely successful. Street
Mm.
Fighter 4 was amazing. 5 had problems, but is kind of making a comeback. They're
Hmm.
bringing back freaking Mega Man, and
Yeah, Mega Man 11.
Resident Evil 7 was a good game.
For
So like
sure.
so if they if Capcom is like has money and there is interest in more Breath of Fire, which I'm not sure honestly, and if they can bring back frickin' Mega Man in 2017, then I think there might still be a glimmer of hope for a Breath of Fire 7. But it would take I don't know. It would take interest, like obvious interest from fans, and and of course interest within Capcom development or Capcom corporate. And I'm not sure that exists, but
Yeah,
I
I
think I
hope.
think we could get a Breath of Fire 7, but that's a total guess on my part. It's I don't know,
I
but
hope
like
so.
I have a weird amount of hope now because I believe in Capcom, perhaps foolishly, and I really, really, really like Breath of Fire 4 now. Now that I've finished it for the first time.
So you want more?
Of course I do. I might have
Yeah,
to look
I
into a
want more.
PS2 copy of Dragon Quarter or fire up my UK imported Breath of Fire 3 UMD, which is a weird thing to say.
That is a really weird thing to say, but thank God the PSP is region
Yeah,
free.
my PSP is dying. When I played Final
Ah,
Fantasy One a couple months ago for the podcast, it crashed multiple times on me, and it was the PSP and not the game. So
oh
I
no.
don't and that was my second PSP as well. So I might need to find a third one used if I ever want to play EOMDs ever again. But that's a
Hmm.
separate discussion. Like do you have any optimism at all for the future of Breath of Fire, or are we pretty sure it's dead?
I like to try and be optimistic about series anyway, so
I'm
I'm gonna go with you.
I'm
Even though
worried.
I was saying it was a death knell, but
I'm worried. I'm too optimistic, honestly.
well, no, because they know it exists, I think. Like they wouldn't make a mobile game if they didn't realize it exists, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a death knell because I gave the example of Tales of I think it's Tales of Link and Tales of the Rays, both of which
Oh.
are fairly successful and as far as I'm aware, okay. But
My
you know,
my worry is that Breath of Fire 6 was the series' chance,
yeah,
and it was a
to-
failure. But
totally.
uh, my hope is that because Capcom is in a pretty good place right now, they understand that a mobile game is not what fans want, and potentially Breath of Fire 7 could be a more traditional RPG for a
Hmm.
modern console, and that would and people might get on board with that. But I don't know. I'm just in a very optimistic place right now with Breath of Fire because I like this one so much.
You're
And
like Capcom's doing you all your favors, and the
yeah,
only thing they need to do
God,
so they need Breath of Fire 7 and Devil May Cry 5, and you'll be like on fire
are you kidding?
with them.
I will be driving the Capcom bandwagon, like all aboard.
I'll be on it.
Plenty of room. But because I'm very excited about Monster Hunter World and Mega Man 11,
Mm.
and I'm a longtime fan of Street Fighter and Devil May Cry and many of those others, I am a bit of a Capcom cheerleader, and I'm not sure if that's come across on podcasts before, but it that is something about me. I'm a fanboy of a lot of old Capcom stuff, and so it was a delight for me to really enjoy an old Capcom RPG for this podcast. So thank you so much, Alana, for talking about it with me for 2 episodes.
No, it's a pleasure. It's really good to come back and play it because my memory was so hazy. And I remember liking it, but re-experiencing it. And it's kind of been like my calm down game for the year because I've
Me
played
too.
so many big, good blockbuster budget games this year and some indie titles and smaller things. When you're reviewing stuff, it's like, wow, there's another release, and I have to sift through them all and
See,
see
you
what
should have
people
just
are
adopted my
doing.
strategy and ignore most of those and then play Persona 5 twice.
But yeah, it's like playing this has been really a palate cleanser because it's been so refreshing to play something that's not hyper stylized or, has an over the top story. It doesn't question humanity and it doesn't question the meaning of being a robot or it doesn't pretend other things. I was going to
And
spoil the end for Danganronpa there and I tried to
whoops.
stop myself. But yeah.
And also its systems are at one level very simple and classic, but also there's a surprising amount of depth
Hmm.
with with the combos and skills. Like there's so many systems in place, but it doesn't feel overcomplicated or overwhelming like it sometimes does in Xenoblade Chronicles 2,
Yeah.
which is a game that I've only barely started, but a game that I appreciate so far. But it's like comparing the complexity of systems between Xenoblade 2 and Breath of Fire 4 is, oh man, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So
See, I
so Breath of Fire 4 does feel old school and refreshing, but there's hidden depth and a story and a world that was so charming and a story I liked so much that I wish it was we had more of both.
for definite.
We've been talking for well over an hour, so I'm afraid it's time to bring this conversation to an end, Alana. Um, Thank you again for joining me, and thank you, listeners, for joining us in this discussion of Breath of Fire 4, which is a game that I thought I would like but exceeded my expectations. And I'm glad that I nominated it and that you, listeners, voted for it in our 100 episode extravaganza from a few months ago. So, if you want to reach out to us, the best way to do so is via email, retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on the RPGFan.com boards, go on the RPG Fan Facebook page, voice your thoughts, yell at us, tell us what game to play next. We read everything that's directed to us, and we do take listener input into account when we choose our games and our topics. And sometimes we do public polls. We did two last year, one for Breath of Fire 4 and one for Dragon Quest 5. And I think there may be a public poll for listeners to choose a game that we cover in coming in the next few months, but I'm not we haven't 100% ironed out all of our plans yet. So in January, we're doing our second indie month. Our first indie month was in early 2016. But we're going to play three indie games in a row, indie RPGs in a row, I should say, over the next 3 weeks, and those are the Surrealist RPG OFF, the um, I should say blockbuster indie RPG Undertale, and the goofy uh, superhero Power Rangers esque strategy RPG Chroma Squad. Those are the next 3 weeks of Retro Encounter. And we have each of those episodes has a different panel and different hosts, so it'll be an interesting exercise seeing what this diverse group of people has to say about these three games.
People know who you are.
Yeah,
They're like, which
you'll
one are you?
never guess which of those three I'm hosting. You'll never guess.
Never.
So, Alana, if a listener wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Best way is probably Twitter. So I'm at Alana Hagues. There's apparently the RPG fan Twitter likes retweeting me a lot at the moment. So if you see my name on there, then that's me, and you can come follow me and talk to me about Breath of Fire, Romantic Saga, or anything. I'm also occasionally on Discord, but if you message me on there, I'm Diving Falcons as I am on the forums. So I'm always happy to talk to anybody, really.
Right. Oh, I didn't mention the RPG Fan Discord before. We do have a Discord. It is called RPG Fan. If you can't access it easily, go on the RPG Fan forums and bug the moderator, Star Mongoose, also known as Greg, and he'll be able to set you up with an invite. And I am on Twitter as at the Real Monsoon or at Evoker for Dogs. I switch between them for depending on what I'm ranting about. And on the forums, I am Monsoon. On the Discord, I am Monsoon Mike. So I think it's about it, Alana. You think are we about ready to sign off?
I think so. I think people should play Breath of Fire 4, and
I think I agree.
it's just been a pleasure. It's been a delightful game to end the year with.
So, listeners, thank you. Good night and good luck.